rider has ever won 4 250cc National Motocross Championships as the 1993 season got underway at Gatorback. Running in fifth. The battle for third place was contested between Mike LAROCCO, he's in third at the present time, and John Dowd, who had dropped back to fourth. LAROCCO did not ride at Gainesville due to an ailing wrist. He was back at the sands of Southwick, though, in rare form. Final lap, it's all Jeff Stanton. Mike KIEDROWSKI had disappeared from the picture. KIEDROWSKI, in an effort to pass Stanton, gave it just a little too much gas. He lost control of his Kawasaki and was spit off the motorcycle. He did recover quickly, in fact, in time to finish in the runner-up position. Here's Mike.
Yeah, I was going about 25 minutes. I was going down just because of the mechanics area, and my bike kind of hit one braking bump, hit the other one, and kind of went sideways and just kind of threw me off the side. And you know, sometimes that happens, but I still ended up second, and there's still another moto left, so I can still get the overall.
If Mike KIEDROWSKI and Jeff Stanton were to swap positions in moto number 2, they would end the day tied in points. The overall win, however, would go to KIEDROWSKI by virtue of the fact that he did the better job in the second moto. Here's the start of moto number 2, and some things never change. There will be a crash in corner number 1 and a near crash near the front of the pack as Brian McElroy saved a vicious swap. And of course, here is the crash at the tail end of the pack. Up front, it was Greg Bowen grabbing the hole shot. Jeff Stanton was in tow, then Phil Lawrence, Mike KIEDROWSKI running fourth. Buried mid-pack was the crowd favorite, John Dowd from Bolton, Connecticut. The defending champ wasted no time in putting distance between himself and the rest of the field. That was his objective. Unfortunately, Phil Lawrence and Mike KIEDROWSKI had followed suit in passing Bowen, and they were soon hot on Stanton's tail. Kiedrowski disposed of Phil Lawrence, and the running order was Jeff Stanton out front, Mike Kiedrowski second with Lawrence third. First two positions, that's the way they had finished in Moto number 1. Stanton, of course, hoping for a repeat. Mike Kiedrowski, though, is not going to cooperate. Now watch this. Kiedrowski cut to the inside. He carried that line all the way to that big fall-away jump. He made the pass. He took over the number 1 position. So now it's Kiedrowski out front with Stanton second. That's the way the moto ended. The overall win went to Mike Kiedrowski with 2-1 moto finishes. Then Stanton, LAROCCO, John Dowd, Phil Lawrence rounding out the top 5. Out of the picture was Damon Bradshaw. The Team Yamaha rider, one of the early favorites to take the crown, finished 9th overall with a 5th and an 11th. After 2 rounds, the point standings looked like this. Kiedrowski on top, Jeff Stanton second. The privateer riding his Kawasaki, John Dowd, was third. Round 3 of the 8-race 250cc National Championship Motocross Series took place at High Point Raceway in Mount Morris, Pennsylvania. It was Damon Bradshaw's best outing of the season. The Team Yamaha star, Mooresville, North Carolina, would finish second in Moto number 1 and would capture Moto number 2. Jeff Stanton, on the other hand, the defending champ, was well back in the pack in both motos. He would take a 5th in Moto number 1 and a 4th in Moto number 2. He did not have a typical Jeff Stanton day. Mike LAROCCO, rider number 5 from LaPorte, Indiana, turned in moto finishes of 3 and 2 to finish 3rd overall. This is the battle for the number 1 position as the pair of riders head for the finish line. Mike Kiedrowski leading the way. Damon Bradshaw tucked in behind. When they reached the checkered flag, it was not quite that close. Bradshaw did finish second with Kiedrowski taking the win. In Moto number 2, it was all Damon Bradshaw. He grabbed the hole shot and was not headed.
Yeah, I'm real happy to, like I said this morning, I'm real happy to come back to Mount Morris, and it feels really good to ride in front of this crowd this morning. I didn't quite know if they were behind me like they normally would, but when I did that parade lap, man, those people really made me feel good, and I have to give that win to them. They did it for me. They cheered me along, and that's what kept me going.
Here's a look at the overall finishes at Mount Morris. Damon Bradshaw on top, Kiedrowski, LAROCCO, Stanton, and Cooper. Stanton had an opportunity to pick up some points on Mike Kiedrowski in that second moto, but was not able to take advantage of the situation. So after 3 rounds, 2 wins for Kiedrowski, 1 for Bradshaw, none for Stanton. That's the way the scores look. Sacramento, California, the famed Hangtown racetrack. It was the silver anniversary running of that event, and it was back on schedule for Mike Kiedrowski in his quest for the 250cc title. Kiedrowski is gone. Meanwhile, at the back of the pack, Lance Smale and Ray Somo having their problems. Look what happened just ahead of them. Damon Bradshaw went down. He twisted his clutch lever, bent the front brake. He would have problems the rest of the moto. Behind Kiedrowski, the battle for the number 2 position was between Steve Lamson, number 21, and number 32, Buddy Antunez. Lamson took the measure of Antunez. Antunez faded even further back as Jeff Stanton now comes up to challenge the Honda of Antunez. It's the factory versus the privateer. The factory wins, and why not? Stanton blasts into the number 3 position. Stanton riding with an ailing back that was injured in a practice crash earlier in the week. Now it's Guy Cooper's turn, rider number 7. He watched what went on in front of him and said, hey, Antunez appears to be easy pickings today, so Cooper is going to take his crack at young Buddy Antunez, and Cooper, like Lamson and Stanton before him, would prevail, and he takes over the number 4 position. Now, Cooper would not be able to maintain that 4th. Mike LAROCCO will get him before the moto is over. Where is LAROCCO? Well, he was back in the pack. LAROCCO was not noted for good starts, and at Hangtown in moto number 1, he had one of his usual. He was well back in the pack, but charging, and LAROCCO working through the pack would end up in the number 4 slot. Meanwhile, let's turn our attention to the battle for the number 2 position at the head of the pack. Jeff Stanton takes the measure of Steve Lamson. It's Stanton now running in the number 2 position. Don't forget Mike Kiedrowski. He's way out front and long gone. For the battle for the number 6 and 7 slots, it's rider number 17, Larry Brooks, and John Dowd, rider number 27. Now, Larry Brooks, aboard his no-lean, tough racing Yamaha, is in the number 6 position. He was in the number 6 position. Let's drop him back to 7. He'll hold that spot until the checkered flag as Dowd breaks into 6th. Damon Bradshaw was on the gas as much as you can be on the gas with a front brake that continually was locking up. Bradshaw suffered that problem throughout the moto. Worked up to 20th place. That's as far as Damon Bradshaw would get. Meanwhile, Mike Kiedrowski was out front. He was on the proverbial cruise control. He's headed for the checkered flag. One more trip through the mechanics signal area. Can't imagine what the signboard read at that late stage of the race. It's just about 50 foot down the track. He took the checkered and moto number 1. A lot of positions changed in that moto. Let's catch us up to date. It's Mike Kiedrowski, Stanton, Lamson, LAROCCO, and Guy Cooper finishing 5th. Second moto, all Mike Kiedrowski one more time. He took the whole shot, said goodbye to the rest of the field, and no one from that point would get a smell. Steve Lamson, rider number 21, was up front in the early going. Mike LAROCCO, with about a mid-pack start, would have to play catch-up one more time. And here's an all-too-familiar sight. If your name is Jeff Stanton, it's having to make a couple of passes to get in contention for the lead. Again, he's dueling with his teammate, Steve Lamson. Stanton will make the pass before the moto was over. Lamson will get back by Stanton, and Stanton will fade slightly due to that injured back we talked about earlier. That was Mike LAROCCO, rider number 5, taking the measure of number 7, Guy Cooper. So with that pass made, we'll go back to the battle for the number 2 position. You recall just a few corners ago, Jeff Stanton had wrested that spot away from his teammate Steve Lamson, and now it's Lamson's turn to return the favor. Stanton with an injured back. That back injury would effectively take him out of the hunt for the series championship. He would stay in for one more round, then drop out of contention. Lamson makes the pass. He takes over the number 2 position. Stanton is not finished going backwards. Here comes Mike LAROCCO. As you watch Jeff Stanton, you'll see he gives this pass up. He gives up that position, I should say, without a struggle. He lets LAROCCO go by. And I'll tell you, when Jeff Stanton does that, Jeff Stanton is hurting. The pass is made. LAROCCO is in 3rd. Stanton is in 4th. That's the way they will finish the moto. At the head of the pack, Mike Kiedrowski looking for his 3rd victory in 4 races. There will be 4 races remaining in the series after he takes the checkered flag. There it is, and the series has reached and passed the midway point. Kiedrowski with 1-1 finishes. It was Lamson with a 3-2, Stanton 2-4, Mike LAROCCO 4-3, John Dowd rounding out the top 5. The way it looks after 4 races have been run, Kiedrowski with 3 wins, 192 points. A lot of distance between himself and Stanton in 2nd. The privateer Dowd still holds on to 3rd. Red Bud Track and Trail, Buchanan, Michigan, the site of round 5 of the 250cc National Championship Series. Red Bud is in the backyard of 2 prominent riders, Jeff Stanton, who is from nearby Sherwood, Michigan, and Mike LAROCCO, who lives just south of Buchanan, Michigan, in LaPorte, Indiana. I'll tell you what, though, the star of the show, at least in the early going, was rider number 12, Jeff Matasevich. I've not seen a lot of Matasevich this year. He's on a brand new ride from Team Suzuki and had not really gotten the hang of that motorcycle. It looked like, though, at round 5 in Red Bud that things were shaping up not to be. Matasevich would be passed by rider number 21, Steve Lamson, in the early going, and following suit after Lamson would come Mike Kiedrowski. It was just 1 year ago at this Red Bud track that Kiedrowski scored his first ever 250cc National Championship win, so the track holds fond memories for the Team Kawasaki ace and championship points leader. Rider number 5, Mike LAROCCO, he would finish 2nd in the moto, followed by Jeff Stanton. Taking the checkered flag was Mike Kiedrowski. Moto number 2, the killer from Canyon Country, California, and series points leader Kiedrowski looking for a repeat of moto number 1, and you know what? He found it. Jeff Matasevich, rider number 12, with another great hole shot, holding off the charge of Kiedrowski in the early going. Behind Kiedrowski, rider number 1, the defending champ, Jeff Stanton. Stanton would drop back 1 position. You had a flash of green there, and that green provided by Mike LAROCCO. LAROCCO was going to pass Stanton to take over 2nd. Once again, Stanton not riding 100% due to that back injury. Finish line, Mike Kiedrowski with hands raised takes the win. Champagne Circle was enjoyed by Kiedrowski, the overall winner. Stanton and LAROCCO, they're neighbors of that Red Bud track, as we said earlier today, and the fans were happy to have them on the victory roster. Here's the way they finished at Red Bud. Kiedrowski with a 1-1, then Mike LAROCCO with a 2-2, Stanton with a 3-3, Lamson finished 4th, and John Dowd, the privateer, took the number 5 position. Point standings after 5 rounds of competition. Mike Kiedrowski, 4 wins, 242 points, a whopping 41-point lead over Jeff Stanton. He just about has the series wrapped up, and Stanton is out of it from this point on with that ailing back. At Unadilla, round 6 of 8, the championship series pretty much belonged, as we earlier alluded, to Mike Kiedrowski. Let's take a look at Kiedrowski's record to date. In the previous races run, Kiedrowski at Gatorback finished first. Southwick, he was first. His worst showing of the season? How about that? A second place at Mount Morris, Pennsylvania. He came back with 2 more first places at Hangtown and Red Bud. What did Mike LAROCCO think of the situation? Well, he gives a big yawn and says, hey, doesn't impress me. Jeff Stanton, shown here at one of the earlier races of the season, was not at the Unadilla Grand Prix, and it's a shame because Jeff is good at Unadilla. 90, 91, and 92, he won the 250cc U.S. Grand Prix. Team manager Dave Arnold tells us why.
He pulled a muscle in his back 3 weeks ago at the Las Vegas Supercross, and he's gone to the last 2 nationals, one at Sacramento and the other at Red Bud, Michigan last week, with his back still kind of out of place. And what it's done is put an additional load on the other muscles to where it's been really seizing up his back, and the muscles contracting and making the pain actually worse and worse as weeks go on. But he's been advised by the doctors to take a couple weekends off and try to let the back relax a little bit and get a little bit of therapy on it, and hopefully be back for the next national at Troy.
Stanton, in fact, would miss Troy and the final round of the 250cc National Championship Series. Moto number 1 at Unadilla, a horrendous crash in corner number 1. The leader is Damon Bradshaw at this point, and Bradshaw is down. He's going to be hit by a couple of riders that were not able to avoid Bradshaw.
We were going in the first turn. I got off to a good start like I wanted to, and went in there and the front end of the bike washed out. When it did, I did something to my wrist. I'm not really sure yet. I think I hopefully just jammed it, but it was sore enough to where I kind of would have wasted my time to try to go back out there. I tried holding on, sitting on the bike, and when I squeezed it and put pressure on it, it hurt too bad. So instead of messing it up any worse, I'm just going to go to the doctor first thing Monday morning and see what's going on.
Let's go to the second corner, still on the opening lap. Now watch this crash. Mike Kiedrowski taken out by Scott Myers. We're going to see this again. To the left, it's Cliff Palmer, rider number 20. He was hit, and he too was down. Now watch Kiedrowski. He's off the side of the track. He starts to cut back across the track. Scott Myers had nowhere to go. He clipped Kiedrowski's rear wheel, and Kiedrowski was down and out of it. None of the 3 riders injured. They were all up and back into it. Meanwhile, John Dowd was way out front. Mike LAROCCO was second. And watch Guy Cooper as he tries to pass Matasevich. He gets shoved outside the berm, almost loses it, but brought it back into control. Dowd was doing a great job. This is just the end of lap number 1, and look at the lead he had over Mike LAROCCO, and look at the way the field was spread out. Here comes Cooper. He finally got the drive and the line that he needed to take over the number 3 position, and that drops Matasevich back to 4th. Second lap, same spot. Steve Lamson had watched Cooper make the pass. He used the same line. He goes into 4th place. Matasevich now back into the number 5 position. Now, Matasevich would hold 5th through the remainder of the race. Lamson, though, was not through with his charge. Coming up, Lamson will be on the rear wheel of Guy Cooper, and he'll make the pass. Here they are. This is the battle for the number 3 position. Lamson and Cooper side by side. That's one of the roughest parts of the Unadilla track. But Lamson ironed out the bumps. Fast. Here comes Mike Kiedrowski after picking himself up after the altercation in the second corner. He really cut a wide swath and a fast swath through the traffic. He just passed Jeff Matasevich. He's currently running in the number 5 position. With the adrenaline flowing, he quickly caught Guy Cooper just a few corners later, and just like that, Mike Kiedrowski is in 4th. Now keep the championship points race in mind. Mike Kiedrowski has a huge lead over the rest of the field. His nearest competitor, Jeff Stanton, is on the sidelines. So Kiedrowski really did not have to work as hard as he worked in Moto number 1 at Unadilla. As a matter of fact, some wiser minds might have said, slow down just a little bit. Do not risk life and limb. Take a 4th, take a 5th, take a 6th, but don't risk crashing. But Kiedrowski bulldozed his way to the front of the pack. With that pass on Steve Lamson, Kiedrowski had taken over the number 3 position. Ahead of Kiedrowski, the battle for the lead was raging. You'll recall rider number 27, John Dowd, the privateer, at one time had a huge lead over Mike LAROCCO. Well, that lead was gone, and out of Gravity Cavity, Mike LAROCCO got the drive and won the drag race to the next corner. Here's another look at the pass. The key was the downhill portion of gravity cavity. That's where Mike LaRocco grabbed a handful of throttle. He had the drive and momentum coming out. LaRocco was able to control the Kawasaki after that hard landing, and he takes over first place. For John Dowd, the problems were just beginning. A few corners later, Dowd would be out of the race. The Bolton, Connecticut rider, the hometown favorite, was a victim of the severe dust conditions at Unadilla. Mike LaRocco was home free in moto number 1. The checkered flag awaits, and LaRocco from LaPorte, Indiana, the Team Kawasaki ace, had scored the win. Mike KIEDROWSKI all the way up to the number 2 position by the time the checkered flag was thrown. Lamson finished 3rd, followed by Guy Cooper, then Jeff Matasevich. In the second moto, Mike KIEDROWSKI's fortunes were slightly different. As a matter of fact, instead of starting at the rear of the pack like he did in moto number 1, KIEDROWSKI got the hole shot and led the field through the dusty and treacherous Unadilla course. KIEDROWSKI had a huge lead with less than a lap down. Rider number 21, Steve Lamson, was in second. Mike LaRocco, with a good start, was up to 3rd. At this point in time, LaRocco looked like he had the momentum and the drive as he was coming from out of the pack, but that corner took care of that. We'll go back and take another look from another angle. Watch LaRocco. He just misses the berm. It looked like, or washed the front end out. For whatever reason, only LaRocco knows. And LaRocco now being passed by Guy Cooper. But watch this. Cooper says, "What's going on here?" And he got off the gas just a little bit, and LaRocco was able to blast back by Cooper. That never should have happened. Cooper should have been able to hold on to that number 3 position. Cooper, though, with only 1 race remaining in a very illustrious career, who could fault the Stillwater, Oklahoma rider for maybe slacking off just a little bit on that very rough course. Not slacking off at all was Mike KIEDROWSKI. He's headed for the home stretch and the win in moto number 2 that will give him the overall honors for the day. Mike LaRocco managed to pick himself up and catch one more time Steve Lamson. This time he made the pass stick to sweep into the number 2 position. Checkered flag time. There's the familiar figure with the arms in the air and pumping. And KIEDROWSKI had claimed victory in the moto. As we said, the overall honors for the day, LaRocco, Lamson, Dowd, and Brooks finishing in the top 5 in moto number 2. And here's the way the overall honors stacked up. KIEDROWSKI, LaRocco, Lamson, Guy Cooper finishing 4th overall. Here are the point standings after 6 rounds. KIEDROWSKI with 5 wins, way out in front. Round 7 of the 8-race series, Kenworthy's Motocross Park in Troy, Ohio. An opportunity for Mike KIEDROWSKI to wrap up the 1993 250cc National Championship. KIEDROWSKI is way out front. Let's take a look at some of the action in the back of the pack. A big tumble there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 riders involved. They're all okay and up and into it, but they're out of it as far as the race is concerned. KIEDROWSKI is gone. Say goodbye. Mike LaRocco's in second place. He's not going to catch the killer out front. Holding down 3rd, Jeff Matasevich. 4th, the property of Steve Lamson. Here comes the checkered flag. Mike KIEDROWSKI patting old paint. That's his motorcycle. He's being congratulated by his mechanic and hugged. Why? Well, KIEDROWSKI has wrapped up the 250cc title. Moto 2, well, it was just a little bit of frosting on the cake. KIEDROWSKI again blast to the front. It was a carbon copy, and when it's a carbon copy, you need a crash at the rear. And there it is. Looks like the same 3 or 4 riders that were involved in the first moto. KIEDROWSKI is headed for the checkered flag. He had absolutely no competition in this one, and what a day for the young man as he sweeps to the first ever 250cc national title of his career. Mike LaRocco again in tow, and KIEDROWSKI is going to take his 6th overall win of the national championship season. Now, all was not well for KIEDROWSKI. Look at him. He looks a little peaked there, doesn't he? He doesn't really look too happy with the way things are going. Reason is, the heat got to him. It was well over 100 degrees at Troy, and I guess the excitement of the moment and winning the championship got to Mike. But look at this. The crowd cheering and clapping. How about that? KIEDROWSKI raises the arm in the air. A little smile for those in attendance from the ambulance crew. He's loaded in. They'll take him in for a checkup. He was all right. KIEDROWSKI takes the overall win. LaRocco finishes 2nd, then Lamson and Cooper. Let's take a look at the point standings after 7 of 8 events. Mike KIEDROWSKI with an 84-point lead. At the season finale, a maximum of 50 points can be earned. The title belongs to the killer. Glen Helen Off-Highway Vehicle Park in San Bernardino, California was the site of the final round of the 250cc National Championship motocross season. The motorcycle being worked on belongs to Mike KIEDROWSKI. KIEDROWSKI, though, was not there to supervise the action. In a practice crash, KIEDROWSKI hurt himself and was taken to the hospital for observation and for a checkup. It was in question at the time that video was shot whether or not KIEDROWSKI would return. Now here's some home video taken of the crash. That was it. It was pretty violent. We're going to see it a couple of more times, but KIEDROWSKI was dashed to the ground very hard and was knocked unconscious. Now you'll see KIEDROWSKI start to move, start to try to crawl off the track, but believe me, he was unaware of what was going on at the time. There it is again. He rolls over on his neck, and actually the extent of the injuries, they could have been much more serious than they actually turned out to be. But KIEDROWSKI would miss the final round of the season. He suffered a concussion, a wrench back, and a severely lacerated tongue. Don't forget, KIEDROWSKI had already wrapped up the national championship prior to the final round. You'll recall from action in the 125cc class that San Bernardino was slightly different than the rest of the races on the circuit. They used the Supercross format, only one race to decide the championship. Now this is heat race number 1. This is a qualifier to get into the main event. Heat race number 1, top 16 riders would go directly to the main. A great battle in that first heat between rider number 5, Mike LAROCCO, and number 21, Steve Lamson. LAROCCO had the early lead. Lamson, though, making the pass on LAROCCO. Now, again, I point out to you that this is only qualifying. Common sense says, hey, let's just settle back. We will accept the positions that we have and go into the main and duke it out there. That's when the points and the money are paid. But LAROCCO was not content with that scenario. LAROCCO came back, he made the pass on Lamson, and Lamson returned the favor one more time. He had the better line through that corner, and Lamson emerged with the number 1 position. LAROCCO still not done. He railed around the outside of Lamson, and LAROCCO again moves to the front running position. So LAROCCO would go on to win that moto with Lamson in tow. Now coming up, Guy Cooper. Watch this move. Watch Cooper as he dives off this. Look at this. Now we're going to see it again in slow motion. Completely parallel to the ground. Would you believe when he disappeared from view that he saved it? Guy Cooper, in riding his last race in a very illustrious career, would finish into number 5 position, but what a show he put on. First heat, top 16 again to the main. LAROCCO, Lamson, Bradshaw, Brian Manley, and again Cooper finishing in 5th. Second heat race, and the return of Jeff Stanton to competition. You recall Stanton had been out the past couple of races due to an ailing back. Rick Ryan, number 531, got the whole shot. Right behind him was number 12, Jeff Matasevich. Then John Dowd was 3rd, and here comes Stanton. Stanton to dispose of John Dowd, who at that time had worked to the number 2 position. Rick Ryan dropping off the pace. Now Stanton setting his sights on Jeff Matasevich's rear wheel. He makes the pass, and Stanton would go on to take the win in the second heat race, followed by Matasevich, Dowd, and Lance Smale. Rick Ryan, who had run up front early in the heat race, finished in the number 6 position. Last chance qualifier, top 8 went to the main event. It was won by Mike Healy, followed by Kemp, Gom, and Boykin. Main event time, and don't forget now, we're not looking at a pair of motos. We're looking at a single race to determine the San Bernardino champion, and that race would pay double points. Mike KIEDROWSKI, wrapping up the title, was not in evidence at the racetrack. He was still at the hospital being looked at and having his body repaired. David Bradshaw took the early lead in the final event, and already you can see Bradshaw is riding a little bit on the ragged side. He was passed by Steve Lamson, rider number 21. That's Jeff Matasevich holding down the number 3 position. Now watch Bradshaw. He's not going to hold that second spot very long. There's Bradshaw. He gets sideways, tries to bring it back, and he high sides. Color Bradshaw gone from this one. That gave the number 2 position to Jeff Matasevich, but Matasevich quickly challenged by rider number 5, Mike LAROCCO. LAROCCO found the inside line on that corner, and he takes over the number 2 position. Jeff Stanton not having a good day. His back was still bothering him. He was not comfortable riding at San Bernardino. Stanton pulled off. He had absolutely nothing to gain. The championship chase was over several races ago. This is the battle for 3rd. Jeff Matasevich has it. Phil Lawrence wants it. Lawrence is going to make the pass. He'll take over 3rd. Matasevich would not be a factor the rest of the day. In fact, the Team Suzuki rider would continue his backward slide and would ultimately end up in the 32nd position. Toward the front of the pack, Steve Lamson was having things his way until Mike LAROCCO showed up. LAROCCO made the pass. That's just the way he did it on Jeff Matasevich to take over the lead, and from that point, LAROCCO was unchallenged. He would win the season finale. Here are the results from San Bernardino. LAROCCO, Lamson, Lawrence, Dowd. Finishing fifth was Guy Cooper, who had announced his retirement. So Mike KIEDROWSKI wraps up the 250cc National Championship with 6 victories in the 8-race series. Coming up, a 4-race series to decide the 500cc National Champion. We'll start with the opening moto in the 500cc class. Now coming up, a horrendous crash in the first corner. It's a right-hander. Watch what happens. Mike KIEDROWSKI is at the bottom of that huge pile. KIEDROWSKI already suffering from a bone-jarring crash that took place in the final round of the 250cc National Championship Series, and that certainly could not be of help. Roy Turner, the team manager for Kawasaki, runs out to see if Mike is okay, and he says, "Hey, I'm okay, Roy. Get back and do your job. I'll do mine." Meanwhile, up front, doing everyone's job was Mike LAROCCO, rider number 5, Jeff Stanton, rider number 2, holding on to the number 2 position, and back of the pack, providing all of the excitement, was KIEDROWSKI. Picked himself up off the ground, and he really began to reel in the riders. He would finish 7th overall in that moto. Meanwhile, Jason McCormick, local favorite from Vancouver, Washington, was holding down the number 3 position, and much to the crowd's delight, he stayed there for a long time. However, he was eventually reeled in by Steve Lamson, rider number 21. McCormick would have to settle for 4th overall in that moto. It was Mike LAROCCO all the way, winning the opening moto of the season in the 500cc class. Second moto, no repeat of that crash, but there would be a repeat of LAROCCO's win. This guy looks red hot in the 500cc Championship Series. Early going, though, it was Steve Lamson and Mike KIEDROWSKI. Recovered nicely from that first moto, didn't he? They were battling for the lead. However, Mike LAROCCO passed them both to take over the number 1 position. Then came rider number 2, Jeff Stanton, and he would finish in that spot. There's the checkered flag for Mike LAROCCO, a pair of moto wins. He wins overall honors for the day, followed by Jeff Stanton with a pair of second-place finishes. Steve Lamson, good ride, a pair of third-place finishes. Look at this, Mike KIEDROWSKI recovered to finish 7th in the first moto, 4th in the second moto. Outstanding effort. From Washougal, the series moved east for round 2 to Millville, Minnesota. The early lead in moto number 1 went to Mike LAROCCO with KIEDROWSKI in tow. Lamson was 3rd, then came Jeff Stanton. Stanton is going to swap positions with Steve Lamson. He'll take the corner wide and cut across the front of Lamson to take over 3rd. Now, 500cc's are a handful no matter what type of terrain you're on. David Gaylord will tell you that it was particularly tough here in Minnesota. We asked Mike KIEDROWSKI, how do you ride a 500?
I kind of picture myself when I ride a 500 as driving like an Indy car or something like that. You have to use the power wisely, put the power to the ground, don't let the tires spin too much, and, you know, use it like that instead of just hammering the throttle and hoping to go in that direction. You have to aim it and, you know, get on the gas smooth, and then it'll work for you. You know, that's the way you have to ride a 500. You can't just grab a handful and hope for the best.
Well, KIEDROWSKI was getting the best out of the machine on that day. He was running in the number 2 position. LAROCCO was out front, Stanton 3rd, and Steve Lamson holding down the number 4 position. And 5th place was Mike Healy, until Healy, with a flat tire, had to pull off the track. The terrain was just too much, the soft conditions for Healy to handle. Then all of a sudden, Mike KIEDROWSKI pulled to a stop. He was up on top of a hill overlooking the mechanics' signal area, and they were watching him, and he was motioning that his throttle was the problem. Shane Nally, his mechanic, started up the hill after him to provide whatever service could be provided, while Jeff Stanton took over the number 2 position, and he set out after Mike LAROCCO. Now, KIEDROWSKI's problems, whatever they were, corrected themselves. He wiggled the throttle a few times, and by the time Shane got there, the bike was running again. KIEDROWSKI fell over trying to turn it around, but he did get the job done, and he was back on the track, and he would complete the moto. Headed for the checkered flag, rider number 5, Team Kawasaki's Mike LAROCCO from LaPorte, Indiana. LAROCCO takes the first moto win. He was followed across the line by Jeff Stanton, Lamson, Fisher, and KIEDROWSKI was 5th. Now, LAROCCO is not noted for good hole shots. However, in Millville, he did a fine job at moto number 1. Here's what he had to say.
I guess I ran out of bad starts, so I had to get a few good ones in there. No, actually, I've been working on it. You know, that's the thing that's been keeping me from winning, so I practiced more on that than I did on anything else, and it seemed to help out.
Second moto, and LAROCCO would pull another decent hole shot, although the best hole shot would be pulled by Steve Lamson. He'll be the leader rounding corner number 1. Not far off the pace will come rider number 2, Jeff Stanton. At the tail end of the pack, there are some riders that are going to suffer the first corner blues. Watch this. The muddy conditions at Millville collected 4. Let's go to the other end of the track in the nastiest whoop section in America. Now, Lamson is still leading. Stanton is in second. And here comes LAROCCO. Watch what happens. LAROCCO makes his bid just a little bit too early. Loses control of the Kawasaki. LAROCCO goes boom. Watch how quickly, though, LAROCCO is up. Generally, in a crash like that, you're going to let the rest of the field pass you to not endanger your body or bike, to avoid getting hit before you get back into the fray. But LAROCCO was looking for a championship in his 500cc class, and he was not about to waste time. From that point, LAROCCO really went to work. He passed riders in wholesale lots on every section of the racetrack. LAROCCO through that feared whoop section. How did he treat it the next time around? Look at this. He just got on the gas, worked his way between a couple of riders, and continued his charge toward the front. Now watch this little dip. LAROCCO's going to be way out of shape, but he maintains control. But a few laps later was out of control and had to pick himself up off the ground. Now from this point, LAROCCO had every right to sit back and rest on his laurels. The first moto win. Things had not been going his way. The motorcycle obviously twisted and bent a little bit, but LAROCCO got right back into it and again started charging toward the front. Now watch this. LAROCCO was cut off. Watch what he does. He was cut off by that rider just prior to crossing that finish line. We're going to see it again. There's the move by that rider. The blue flag was out. That says move over, and the guy did. He moved into LAROCCO's way. So LAROCCO hits him on the back of the helmet. Watch. Bam! With a slap to the head, he completes the pass. Jeff Stanton headed toward the finish line and a victory in moto number 2. And would you believe this was Stanton's first overall win of the 1993 National Championship season? Here are the results of the second moto, and look who finished third. Mike LAROCCO, despite all of the problems, had worked up inside the top 5, took a third-place finish, and that was good enough to give him second overall for the day. Overall honors, of course, went to Stanton with a 2-1 finish. Broome Tioga Sports Center in Binghamton, New York. Round 3 of the series. Here are the highlights as seen on Prime Network. The hole shot is going to go to Steve Lamson, rider number 21. He'll be followed by LAROCCO. Then Mike KIEDROWSKI, the defending 500cc champ. Jeff Stanton will be 4th. Now, the order will not stay that way very long. Here's Lamson out front. There's LAROCCO. Here comes KIEDROWSKI and Stanton. What we're going to see is Steve Lamson going back to 4th place with Mike KIEDROWSKI taking the number 1 position with LAROCCO in tow. Jeff Stanton, rider number 2, is holding down the number 3 slot. Now that's the way they would finish at the checkered flag. The surprising thing here is that Mike KIEDROWSKI took the win rather than handing it to his teammate Mike LAROCCO. LAROCCO was just 4 points ahead of Stanton in the championship chase. KIEDROWSKI was 29 down. If Stanton would end up winning the title by a couple, that move would have come back to haunt Team Kawasaki. Moto number 2, Jeff Stanton blasted to the front of the pack. He was followed by Jason McCormick. Close behind came Mike LAROCCO with KIEDROWSKI running back in the pack. Now, when the field sorted themselves out, LAROCCO would pass Jeff Stanton. The thing we'll call your attention to is the move made by Stanton, the near disaster. Watch this after the pass was made. Can you believe that Stanton saved? Look at this. The motorcycle is perpendicular to the ground. He hits on the front wheel. Bang, comes down. Stanton is so strong, he was able to save that near disastrous endo. At the checkered flag in moto number 2, it was Mike LAROCCO, with Stanton not far behind. KIEDROWSKI would finish in the number 3 position. Let's take a look at the overall positions in Binghamton, or at Binghamton, I should say. LAROCCO, the overall win, then KIEDROWSKI with a 1-3, Stanton with a 3-2, Lamson finishing 4th with a pair of 4th place finishes. So 3 of 4 events are down. LAROCCO on top by 9 over Jeff Stanton, Lamson running in 3rd, then KIEDROWSKI. The number 1 place final round of the 500cc National Championship Series was up for grabs. Mike LAROCCO held a 9-point lead over his closest competitor, that being Jeff Stanton from Team Honda. LAROCCO had to be thinking about 1 year earlier. He came to this same facility with an advantage in the 125cc class that looked to be unbeatable. He scored no points in either moto and lost the 125cc title to Jeff Emig. He had to drive that thought out of his mind, and drive it away he did. The whole shot went to Lance Smale, with Jeff Stanton running a close second. In third place was Mike LAROCCO. Mike KIEDROWSKI was fourth. Now Stanton is going to quickly pass Lance Smale, but watch the pass between the Kawasaki teammates. Remember again, Mike LAROCCO, the championship points leader, was in third place. Watch this. Here comes KIEDROWSKI to take that third place away from Mike LAROCCO. Now the difference between first, that's where Stanton is, and fourth, that's where LAROCCO is 7 points. You have to wonder why KIEDROWSKI made that pass and put his teammate, who is fighting for the championship, in that very vulnerable position. KIEDROWSKI, though, was not finished, and you'll see what I mean before this moto was over. Mike LAROCCO and KIEDROWSKI both disposed of Lance Smale. At that point in time, it was Stanton out front. Mike LAROCCO was running in a number 3 position, and sandwiched between those two riders, Mike KIEDROWSKI. He did not stay there. He moved up to challenge Jeff Stanton and would indeed take the lead away from Stanton. For Stanton, coming into this season finale, the way was clear. He needed to win. Regardless of what happened to Mike LAROCCO, he could only go out, go for the win, and then let the chips fall where they may. Here's what Stanton had to say.
All I can do is control myself and go out there and try to win both motos. Unfortunately, it hasn't gone, the whole year hasn't gone the way I wanted it to, but that's racing.
Mike LAROCCO, meanwhile, was racing all by himself in the number 3 position. He knew exactly where he was. He knew what the points difference would be between himself and Stanton should the moto end that way. LAROCCO probably a little on the nervous side. He was fighting for his first ever national championship. He did not want to risk that title by taking an unnecessary risk in a crash. So Mike KIEDROWSKI wins, Jeff Stanton finishes second, and Mike LAROCCO, as you'll see, is way back in the number 3 position. But look at Stanton. Not very happy. He needed that win, and he knows it. KIEDROWSKI was already in the pits. Stanton almost there by the time LAROCCO crossed the finish line. That's how far back he finished in the number 3 position. Makes no difference. Had it been 6 inches or 2 miles, third place points are third place points. Here is the difference between the two riders as we head toward the season finale of the 1993 Championship Motocross Series. 7. Off the line, it was rider number 21, Steve Lampson, with the hole shot, but close behind came the contenders for the title. Mike Jones was in second place. Mike KIEDROWSKI in third will make quick work of Jones. There's the pass. Jones drops back to third. He'll go back further than that before the day is over. Let's turn our attention to the front of the pack and the pass that is being made. Mike KIEDROWSKI sweeps around the outside of Steve Lampson, sets him up for the next corner. KIEDROWSKI takes over the number 1 position, dropping Lampson back to second. Here comes LAROCCO. He's currently in the number 3 position. All he has to do is stay there, and the title is his. Stanton, running in 4th, needs to pass at least 3 riders to have any opportunity to win this championship. It's not going to happen. Mike LAROCCO, though, was not through with his charge. Here's LAROCCO. He tries the outside of Lampson. Nowhere to go there. He's going to get Lampson, though, before this moto is over. Smart money says LAROCCO should set in the number 3 position. Should not worry about the pass. Should not endanger his bike or body in attempting the pass. Apparently, though, there was no smart money on this race. LAROCCO rockets into the number 2 position. Now here comes perhaps the most amazing piece of riding in the entire series. Steve Lampson holding down the number 3 position. Steve Lampson has not a prayer at winning the title. His teammate still does. His teammate needs every point he can possibly garner. What does Lampson do? Well, he stays in front of his teammate. Stanton had to work and work and work to get around Lampson. They used to call it team tactics when one rider would get out of the way of another on the same team. It appears that team tactics are a thing of the past. It's every rider for themselves, every rider trying to pick up every possible point in the moto. Last lap, And time has run out. Mike LAROCCO keeps it upright, and he's going to win the first ever national championship of his career, and how sweet it is. Just 1 year ago, the 125 title was wrested away from him in the final events of the season. He had a huge point lead, but lost it all. Mike's father, Mike Sr., on the sidelines, still does not believe it's going to happen until Mike crosses that checkered flag, and there it is. Mike LAROCCO is the 1993 500cc national champ. Now Mike looks around and says, hey, shouldn't there be champagne and flowers here? Well, the only thing he found was the hand of Jeff Stanton, as Stanton was the first rider to congratulate Mike LAROCCO on winning that title. A big hug from Dad. The series is over, and 1993 is history in the world of motocross. Here's the way they finished at Delmont. It was Kiedrowski with 1-1 finishes to take the overall win. LAROCCO, Stanton, Lamson rounding out the top 4 in the overall standings at the season finale. The final standings, Mike LAROCCO with a pair of wins is the champion. Jeff Stanton finishing second, Mike Kiedrowski third, and Steve Lamson in 4th place. In 1993, 3 riders enjoyed the fast track to victory. Doug Henry won the 125 class, Mike Kiedrowski the 250 class, and Mike LAROCCO the 500. As I said at the outset, it was a great year for motocross.